What's up, guys, and welcome back to the sixth ever episode of Keeping It Spooky. I'm your host Luke here with my co-host Ink. It's mock season, baby. My favorite time of the year.
Woo!
One of my favorite times of the year. We're gonna mock today. We're gonna mock our first rounders. But before we get to that, we're gonna talk the Diggs trade. So Ink, thoughts on this Diggs trade?
Uh, I don't really get it. Uh, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense for either side. Like, it's definitely not an A+ trade for either side. The Bills needed to get rid of Stephon Diggs. He's been a very vocal presence in the locker room and for the wrong reasons. So I understand them getting rid of him. But then Houston decided to trade for him, right? And then voided like 2 or 3 years of his contract. So now he's only on a 1-year deal. So
Yeah,
Houston gave up a second round pick for 1 year of Stephon Diggs.
yeah, it doesn't make sense. But
It's really weird.
And yeah, in terms of fantasy value, I don't love it either for most parties except your CJ Stroud owners. CJ Stroud is probably I mean he's probably top three quarterbacks now in some people's eyes in terms of fantasy, which is crazy to say, but I mean with the amount of talent around him, it's kind of hard not to put him in there, or at least in that conversation. Um, but yeah, I mean, the CJ Stroud stock is ridiculous. I've seen him in dynasty leagues being like the second overall player drafted. Like
Wow.
it's unbelievable. But in terms of like a Nico Collins stock or a Tank Dell stock or Dig stock, unfortunately, I really want to see a Nico or a Tank Dell like wide receiver one season. I guess it's not going to happen. Hopefully, it will happen sooner or later. But all their stocks kind of did dip off a bit. But there's obviously still value because each and every one of them is so talented. And then Josh Allen, he could run for like 20 touchdowns this year if he if he really wanted to.
Yeah, I mean, does this take Stephon Diggs out of the second round for you
Yeah,
completely?
yeah, 100%,
Yeah,
100%.
I'm in agreement with you. It's an unfortunate situation for fantasy owners. I mean, Stephon Diggs is no doubt one of the most talented wide receivers in the NFL, but there are a lot of mouths to feed in that Houston offense. He'll still be probably the number one option, I'd imagine, unless he continues to play like he did the second half of last year. Um, but Stephon Diggs, now probably a third rounder. I think he's pretty much locked into the third round. I don't see him falling much more after that, and I don't see him going earlier at this point. Um, in terms of Nico Collins, I feel like this hurts him more than it hurts Tank Dell personally. I think Tank Dell is less of the similar mold than Diggs is, while Nico Collins is really just going to be that deep threat now. I really would hate to see Nico Collins just become Gabe Davis. Like
No, don't say that. Don't say that. Don't
that would
don't
be
don't don't say that.
I just think that there's a high possibility of him just being the Texans' deep threat, and that's upsetting
Well,
considering how great he was last year.
Well, like when we look at teams historically, there hasn't really been teams historically with like three great wide receiver options. The only team that kind of comes to mind, but it's different, obviously, was the Bucks team a few years ago with AB, Chris Godwin, and Mike Evans. And I mean, they all did get their fair share of like targets or whatnot. I think like in this case, just because of how well flowing the offense can be, they will get their targets. It's just none of them will take that next level in terms of what we want. None of them is good. Like Nico Collins before the Diggs trade was being talked about in the third round, like you said. And this wide receiver one, tons of upside. That can't happen anymore, unfortunately. He's still probably gonna have a great year, but just not as high as expectations as we would have initially thought.
So where does Nico Collins fall for you now, and Tank Dell for that matter? Like, just if you had to guess, I'm not going to hold you to this.
I'd still guess around that wide receiver like that zone towards like the back end of the fifth round because they're still both talented. I can honestly see them going higher just because there's hype there. I mean, whoever's gonna be dignified as a two, obviously might is gonna have more hype than the other, but there's so much talent there that you know what they can't slip that far. Like you said with Diggs, like they can't slip that far behind. They're gonna
Mhm.
their value's obviously tanked a little bit, but it's not gonna tank completely. Hint tank Dell.
Yeah, I knew you were gonna do it. Um, I Yeah, I'd imagine this being a situation where you have those two wide receivers. You don't really know who the one is usually. In this case, you don't know who the two is going to be, but they're both very, very talented. So they get drafted around the same area, and you hope that you pick the right one. Like it's that type of situation, in my opinion.
Mm,
Uh, I imagine them both going in like the early sixth in a 10-man league, um, and
yeah.
late fifth in a 12-man, which would put them around like the 59, 60th area. If
think
I'm,
I think a
yeah,
little earlier would be. I think that's a little harsh, but I did want to bring up something on the Bills side of things. Curtis Samuel, right now, I mean, obviously they're probably going to draft someone maybe in the first round. I'm assuming so. On the
we'll get to
Bills,
that.
yeah, we will get to that. On the Bills side of things, Curtis Samuel right now is a wide receiver one, which is cool, but I don't know if he can handle that. We'll see. We'll see. But I do like him as kind of like a later, not a sleeper necessarily, but just a later fly, not a flyer, like a eighth to ninth rounder. At this current situation, we don't know what the Bills are going to do come draft time. But for James Cook's sake, I love this for James Cook. James Cook in the second half of the year was a monster, and I think he can continue that streak.
It's interesting that you bring up James Cook because that's not where my mind was headed. I was thinking tight ends on both sides of
Oh yeah, and
this.
no, and also Kincaid. Sorry, I forgot to mention Kincaid and James Cook. I think will benefit a lot from this.
Yeah. Dalton Kincaid is a cemented like top 3 tight end fantasy pick next year, in my opinion. Even with all that talent, you got Kelsey, you got Mark Andrews, you got Kyle Pitts, who's back in the mix now. You got George Kittle, but I think Kincaid is probably right at the top of that pecking order. And Sam Laporta. Shout out Sam Laporta.
You forgot
But I think
McBride.
and McBride, but I'd put Kincaid above almost all of those guys. He's probably my tight end 2 or 3 now.
The thing with Kincaid that does worry me a bit, we saw last year when Dawson Knox was playing, his role was tampered a bit, and he wasn't as effective as he was when Dawson Knox was on the field because of that injury. I'm assuming, and this will happen because it has to. Kincaid will take over as head and one, but Dawson Knox will still be in the mix of things, which does concern me, but not to the level of like don't draft him, to the level of the as you said the top three tight ends. I still see guys like Andrews, Kelsey. I like McBride better than Kincaid right now. But yeah, I mean Kincaid's a great fantasy tight end next year. There's a lot of hype there, but this with Dawson Knox there, I am a little not. I don't want to say skeptical because that seems like I don't want to draft him, but I'm like more wary of it compared to
Dawson Knox Dawson Knox doesn't really move me, but that's okay. If that's your opinion, then that's your opinion.
yeah, but
Um, unfo- oh, go ahead, go ahead. I was gonna say something else. Go ahead.
I'm just saying, like when you look at the stats last year, I don't mean to be a stat nerd, but when like Dawson Knox played with Kincaid, Kincaid was completely like in a different role than what he was without Knox in the field, and I think that is something to take notice of. I'm not saying don't draft Kincaid because I love Kincaid and he's very talented, and will be very high on my tight end board. I'm just saying I like some guys over him, but still in that great range of tight ends.
I remember Kincaid still being pretty valuable for them during their playoff run in that late part of the season.
He wasn't.
I guess my mind isn't serving me correctly. But on the other side of things, unfortunately for my guy Dalton Schultz, this does hurt his stock for sure. We were talking about him as a potential tight end one pre-free agency, and that's not the case anymore.
No, not at all. Um,
And that's a mix of a few things. I mean, you have the Texans getting Diggs, which takes away from his targets, and then you have other teams uh, creating better situations for their tight ends as well. When you look at a Kyle Pitts and you look at a David Njoku potentially, just players like that.
Brock Bowers.
Um, Brock
Ooh.
Bowers, exactly. Uh, Kicking Dalton Schultz out of that top 10, top 12. He's a verge tight end one or a fringe tight end one in a 12 man, I'd say.
Yeah, I think in terms of Schultz, he's obviously a very talented tight end, and in terms of his offense, it's going to be moving a lot, and he will have some volume. And I wanted to correct myself because Ink, I told you that I didn't believe I thought his touchdowns would go down. I don't know about that. I think his just overall targets will go down, and
Mhm.
I think he'll still be somewhat of a red zone threat because that he is great at that. He's always been great at that, and Stroud will look for him in the red zone. But I just think in terms of like he's not going to get the volume of your all the 12 tight ends. I mean, we could list them right now if we really want to, but we're not for time's sake.
No, go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay,
Let's do it. Just so
okay,
people know we're not BSing.
all right. Kelsey, Andrews, Laporta, Hawkinson, Hurt. Should we count Hawkinson?
We can count Hawkinson, but you know what? Keep him off for now, and then
Yeah. Okay.
if it helps push our agenda, then put him in.
Okay. McBride, Laporta, Kincaid, um, Evan Ingram, Brock Bowers, Kyle Pitts. I like Jake Ferguson a lot. I know you're not a big Jake Ferguson guy, but I think like
Yeah,
Jake Ferguson, Dallas
David
Goddard,
Njoku.
David Njoku, George Kittle. I forgot George Kittle. There's a lot of guys. I think I just named like what I-
Yeah,
12,
but
13.
this overall, this is a good thing. I mean, we've been dealing with for the past like 5, 7 years only having Travis Kelsey,
And
George
Kittle.
Kittle, or Mark
Yeah.
Andrews as options, and now we have all of these guys that can potentially be your tight end one and give you good production. It's nice to see.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I wouldn't be surprised if teams like, started one at tight end and one at flex as well, like just rocking two tight ends for the hell. I can totally see that
Mhm.
happening just because there's so many talent in that pool. Hopefully all these guys
Mhm.
live up to our expectations. Probably not, just because that's how things usually are. But
Mhm.
yeah, now let's move into the mock season. So how we're gonna do this is Ink, you're gonna be odds, I'm gonna be even. So we're gonna do like a combined mock, but it's the idea we had is like it's kind of like a draft day situation because we're not gonna get the ideal guys we want because we're both kind of picking for not for ourselves, but like for different scenarios. So Ink, with the first overall pick, do you wanna start us off?
Yeah, so with this first pick, I decided to go a different route, and I'm gonna take Bucky Irving from Oregon first overall. Just an elite combination of speed and power as a running back. I think it's what the Bears need. DeAndre Swift isn't him, so I think that's who they're gonna take first overall.
Adam a little later in my board, but I don't hate that. I don't hate.
Yeah. All jokes aside, it's gonna be the guy that paints his nails, Caleb Williams, going first overall. It's chalk. It's been chalk since day one. Caleb Williams, or not? Caleb Williams was going to be the first pick in the draft. It was just a question of whether he was going to be a Bear or not. Justin Fields is now in Pittsburgh, so Caleb Williams is a Bear.
Yeah, right pick. One of the best quarterback uh, prospects I guess we've ever seen come out of college. I mean, we said that about Trevor Lawrence, but I think Caleb is even better than what Trevor Lawrence was in college. Um, but I don't think it was ever in the cards that like Justin Fields was gonna stay the starting quarterback for the Bears. I don't think that was ever gonna happen. I'm not saying that as like a dig for Justin. I just don't think that was ever the plan. I mean, you might have your own opinion on that, but
I'm a
anyway,
Fields believer,
I,
but it's
I know
okay.
you are. I know you are. Anyway, with pick number two, the Washington Commanders, completely new staff, new ownership, new GM, tons of free agency signings, basically a whole brand new team, and kind of
Had a good offseason, man.
yeah, yeah,
They had a really good offseason.
and excites me a bit because in our whole era of living the Redskins football team or the Commanders has been very mediocre. Besides, I think the one like good memory I have of them is like RG3 in his rookie year, just like dominating.
Mhm.
But yeah, they've been pretty mediocre since, and I'd like to see this new chapter. So I don't think this is the right pick, but I think this is what they're gonna do. I think they're gonna take Jaden Daniels out of LSU. I like Drake May more as a prospect, but I just think all the cards are pointing towards them taking Jaden Daniels. So Jaden Daniels is my pick.
I agree with you completely. They signed Marcus Mariota to be their backup, their veteran quarterback presence on the team. And I mean, which one of these two prospects does the mold fit more? Or I'm sorry, three prospects, since we're including JJ McCarthy and everything now. Is it Drake May or Jaden Daniels? Who does Marcus Mariota play more like? Drake May's a pocket passer. Jaden Daniels ran for like 3 billion yards last year. So I'm leaning Jaden Daniels. I agree with you. I think Drake May's a better prospect. I think he could end up being the best quarterback in this class, if I'm being honest with you. But I think Jaden Daniels is who the Commanders have their eyes set on.
Cool, cool, cool.
And then with the third pick, the New England Patriots. It's been talked about as a potential trade down spot. We will not be doing trades in today's mock draft.
Yeah.
So with this third pick, I think it makes sense to take North Carolina's very own Drake May, brother of North Carolina basketball legend Luke May. Drake May is a fantastic quarterback. He's going to be their franchise cornerstone moving forward in a team that is desperate for some talent on the roster. They also have the opportunity to sit him for his first year, or at least a portion of his first year, because they have one of the best backup / bridge quarterbacks in the NFL in Jacoby Brissett. And I just feel great about that pick for the Patriots moving forward.
Yeah, I think that's the right pick if he does fall there. And obviously, like you said, Jacoby Brissett is one of the better, I guess, backup, but he could start. We don't really know. But, I like to see when quarterbacks kind of, the veteran starts before them for a couple of games, let them settle in. We've seen in history how that's worked well. And we've also seen how it's, throwing a guy right in there hasn't worked out well. Bryce Young. And yeah. Anyway, pick number 4, my Arizona Cardinals. We were gonna pick for each other's team, but this pick is kind of consensus. It's what everyone's kind of saying, so I'm just gonna do it. Marvin Harrison Jr. We finally get. I mean, I say finally, like we didn't have D Hop or Larry Fitzgerald in the past 3 years, but Marvin Harrison Jr. I mean, he's been talked about a Cardinal for on Cardinals Twitter at least for 2 years now to go to the Cardinals because we just needed him. And yeah, I mean, I'm so excited for this. Just Larry Fitzgerald was the reason I fell in love with the Cardinals, and to have another insane wide receiver prospect may potentially come to the Cardinals excites me so much as a fan. And yeah, Marvin Harrison Jr. to the Cardinals.
Have no gripes with it. It's chalk right now. It makes perfect sense. It's the best pick that they can make. I agree 100%. Now the fifth pick, another potential trade down spot. The Chargers, they got rid of their two best wide receivers this offseason. They're arguably their best running back. So Justin Herbert is in need of weapons. Quentin Johnston did not have the rookie year we were hoping for. Josh Palmer is solid, but not meant to be a wide receiver one.
And somehow only 24.
Or possibly two.
How is he only 24?
He looks like he's 47. But yeah, he was drafted 3 years ago.
That blows my mind.
But yeah, so I've done a lot of back and forth on this pick, but I think after trading away Keenan Allen and releasing Mike Williams, they have to go wide receiver here. And when you have the best wide receiver in pretty much any other draft available for you at 5, you might as well take him. So I have the Chargers going with Malik Nabers out of LSU.
Love it for fantasy. I know we're not talking about fantasy strictly right now, just because we want to get the mocks over with. But yeah, whoever made that article about Malik Nabers being a temper tantrum, by the way, I don't know if you've seen that on Twitter, but this guy is an asshole. Don't diss Malik like that, because it's just trying to hurt his draft value. It's BS. Some guy came. I don't know if you saw, but some guy came with some BS report that he's hard to work with, and I don't know. It was just weird.
There's always people like that try and hurt people's draft stock. oftentimes I imagine that it comes from inside NFL organizations trying to get players to fall to them.
Who
But
knows?
like that's just my own imagination running wild. I've been staying off of Twitter since free agency ended because I just hate it as a place. So I've been doing my best to stay away from it. So
Yeah,
I didn't see that, but it I promise you it won't hurt Malik Neighbors that badly.
no.
He's like a top 6 lock.
Yeah, and now moving on to the Giants. The Giants is an interesting spot because they really need everything they can get on offense. They need offensive line technically. They need quarterback. They need wide receivers. Darren Waller might not even play. That's a weird situation, but that's off topic. Anyway, probably because his girlfriend
Mhm.
is the corniest woman on the planet. I don't know if you saw that video of her eating
His
popcorn.
wife. His
Oh,
wife.
yeah, that was terrible.
She
I
she plays for the Aces,
yeah,
I think,
I kind of
which
wanted
is a WNBA team.
I kind of wanted to glue my eyes shut after that, but I didn't. So with this pick, the Giants, another crazy wide receiver prospect that we really, in other years he'd probably go first in terms of wide receivers as well. I mean, when you think of tiers, you think of Harrison Jr. and Neighbors, but Adunes is up there as well. There's maybe not in the same tier, but he's up there. He's a great prospect. Really great year with Washington. Worked really well with Michael Penix. The Giants really need some kind of playmaker. I think they're going to stick one more year at Daniel Jones, see ride it out, and then next year they might address that. So Roma Dunze is my pick for the New York Giants.
Yeah, eventually I'll learn how to say his name. I'm not exactly sure where the A is, and yeah, it's whatever. But Rome Odunes, whatever his name is a great prospect. He had a great season at Washington. Him and his teammate Jalen Polk, both very, very productive in their season last year. And the Giants need wide receiver talent. Darius Slayton is on one of the final years of his contract, and he's nothing too special anyway, even though I like him. Uh, and then outside of that, you have Wandale Robinson and Jalen Hyatt, both guys that you can't really be too confident in to be your wide receiver one. So Roma Dunze locks up that wide receiver one spot immediately and can be a difference maker for the Giants on day one.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like it a whole lot. 7, Tennessee Titans. Uh, in the past, and last time I did a mock draft before free agency, I had them going wide receiver. But since then, they've signed Calvin Ridley to a very expensive contract. And DeAndre Hopkins is still there. And I'm sure they're still praying that Traylon Burks can like find his hands or
Dude, he's
something.
he's big. He's like a chunky guy. I don't know if you I didn't realize
Yeah, he's
how
a big dude.
I was like, God damn.
Heading into the draft, that was like a potential thing hurting his stock. Like he showed up to the combine or his pro day like really heavy or something.
Yeah, that's
He's
right.
got Zion. He's got
Yeah.
Zion syndrome. But so uh instead of drafting a fat wide receiver, we're gonna take a fat guy up front, and we're gonna go with the offensive tackle number one, Joe Alt out of Notre Dame. Don't know too much about offensive linemen. I haven't studied them too much, so I'm not going to BS you about him. But from what I understand, he can play either tackle position and he can play guard for you. So just a versatile offensive lineman for a team that needs any building blocks that they can get.
Yeah, it's a safe pick here. Obviously they can go other directions. Maybe it could be. I don't think it's gonna be a trade down spot because the Titans would love to get help wherever they can to help out Levis. But there's a lot of tackle talent. We'll get over that, or we'll get to it.
Mm-hmm.
But there is a lot of tackle talent, which is exciting for teams, and a lot of teams always need tackles, so it's exciting for that. Moving on to the Falcons, I think this could very well be a trade down spot because the Falcons don't
Mm-hmm.
necessarily need anyone in this top 10, but I think they're just going to go with the best. I don't want to say best prospect available because Brock Bowers is still on the board. I don't think they're going to take Brock Bowers with Kyle Pitts still in the room or in the way. So I'm going to take the best defensive prospect in this draft class in Dallas Turner for Alabama. Kind of like you said, I don't know too much about Dallas Turner. I don't pay attention as much to the defensive players, but what I know is this: everyone talks very highly about him, and this seems like the best defensive player in the draft.
Yeah, I mean, he's probably in my opinion, he's one of the better edge prospects we've had in the past like 3 years or so. I mean, obviously, there's a lot of talent in the past few years. You have like the Aiden Hutchinsons, the Kayvon Thibodeaux,
Will Anderson.
uh, obviously Will Anderson, his former teammate. But Dallas Turner was exceptional when he was on the other side of Will Anderson, and he was really good last year too. He was the leader of that Alabama defense. Just a good character guy. And then obviously he went to Alabama. The talent is there as well. Disciplined, high athleticism, long arms. Like he's got it all. He's got the speed. Obviously showed that at the combine. So yeah, I think Dallas Turner's a good spot. Has a good spot for him in Atlanta.
Yep.
And then at 9, Chicago has their second first round pick. They could go somewhere to help Caleb Williams, potentially offensive line, or they could go to the defensive side of the ball, considering that they have their two main receiver targets locked up. Keenan Allen is now a Bear. DJ Moore became a Bear last year. I think they're good on drafting wide receivers. So, with this 9th pick, I decided to go to the defensive side of the ball. And I went with the edge rusher out of Florida State, Jared Verse. Jared Verse was a guy that was draft eligible last year, and he would have been a first-round pick more than likely, but he decided to go another year, hopefully increase his stock. And in this mock draft, I have him doing that, going top 10, being one of the better players in that Bears defensive room. A very improved defense, by the way. They were great in the second half of the season last year. And I think Jared Verse can be a complete game wrecker next to Montez Sweat.
Yeah, I like that pick a lot. Whoever started this rumor about the Bears pulling a Texans and trading back into the top 4 for Marvin Harrison, please stop. Please stop doing this because it's like that's ridiculous. And at least in
I
my opinion, but that is ridiculous.
We have to pray that the Bears never become good because Bears fans are something else. I saw something earlier saying that they take Caleb first overall, trade back into the top 5 to get Marvin Harrison after the Cardinals trade down with the Vikings.
Yeah.
And then later on, trade back into the first round to get Leia Tulatu.
So
if the Bears ever get good, we're all dead.
We're
all going to hear it for the next 30 years.
We could be on the cusp of that. So, hopefully. But number 10, the Jets pick here. Now the Jets, I love what the Jets did this offseason in terms of offense. Got two tackles, specifically Tyron Smith. The more notable one, love that for Aaron Rodgers, for Breece Hall, for Aaron Rodgers' Achilles, for Aaron Rodgers' ACL, for Aaron Rodgers' mental state. So the Jets could realistically go with another tackle because I think they're both on one, or Tyron's at least on a 1-year deal. So they could, draft a guy, develop him. But this is the first round, and the first round you look for the best available in most scenarios. So I think they just take the best player available, give Aaron Rodgers another weapon. Brock Bowers is my pick for the New York Jets.
Great pick. They haven't had an elite tight end like ever. Not that I can think of.
CJ Uzoma.
Yeah, that signing didn't work out too well. But Brock Bowers is a generational, supposedly tight end prospect. He was an absolute freak at Georgia in his first 3 years. And the absolute de facto tight end one in this class. He'll probably be a fantasy tight end one. Like, this guy is everything you'd want in a tight end. Amazing receiving threat as a tight end, on par with Travis Kelce in that aspect. The blocking still has to come a ways, but he's a decent blocker. Perfect fit for the Jets trying to win right now with Aaron Rodgers at the helm.
Yeah, and by the way, for fantasy, great landing spot if he goes to the Jets. Love that. I mean, the amount of red zone targets he can be potentially getting. I mean, that offense, just the sound of it, Garrett Wilson, Brees Hall, Mike Williams, and Brock Bowers, like that. That if it everything works out, it's a Jet, so it probably won't. But if everything works out, that is it's like near perfect.
The only thing stopping that Jets offense is Nathaniel Hackett,
Yeah.
MetLife Turf, and ayahuasca, and potentially RFK, I think.
All right.
But
Let's not bring that up. Let's not bring that up.
okay. And then that brings us to Minnesota. My least favorite team in the NFL. I promise I'm not going to make a terrible pick for them. I actually like this pick. If I was them, this is what I would do.
Oh boy.
Uh, we're in. Okay, I'm putting myself in Minnesota's shoes. We're in a rough space with the quarterback room right now. This has to be a quarterback. Since we're doing no trades, they probably trade up. They made that trade with the Texans to acquire a second first round pick.
Yeah.
Or no, a third? A third first round? No, it's a second. It's a second first round pick.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, they're probably trading up for a quarterback, trying to get like either Drake May or people have been saying JJ McCarthy in that top 5 range. Me personally, I think it's smoke and mirrors. There's a lot of that goes on when it comes to the NFL draft. Teams will say they're high on a guy when they're not really. If you remember last year, the day before the NFL draft, Will Levis had the highest odds to go second overall. And he didn't go second overall, he went in the second round.
Yeah.
I think that guy this year is JJ McCarthy. And I think that the Minnesota Vikings, if they were for some reason to stay at 11 and draft a quarterback, I think they go with Michael Penix from Washington.
Wow.
And here's my reasoning. JJ McCarthy, what do they say about him? He's a great guy and he's a game manager. He's basically the next Brock Purdy if you get him in the right system. Minnesota has a great system. But I will also say that it's a very pass-heavy system with 2 excellent wide receivers. Not to mention a decent improving offensive line. Michael Penix fits like a glove. He was great last year with Jalen Polk and Rome Odunze as his 2 wide receivers, and now he's going to have Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison as his 2 wide receivers. Going against NFL defenses, but still, it's a very similar situation with a better offensive line and a great coaching staff. So if I'm the Vikings, I take Michael Penix here.
I knew you were gonna do something out of the ordinary there. Obviously the consensus there is that everyone thinks JJ McCarthy's a Viking. I think everyone's kind of like envisioned on that, or the Vikings potentially trading up getting Drake May. So it's interesting you went that route. And now Sean Payton is quivering in his boots because he doesn't really want JJ McCarthy because he really hates rookie quarterbacks. But in this kind of scenario, he kind of has to take JJ McCarthy because the Broncos cannot start Jared Stidham if he's still even on the team. They might get who's that wide receiver that played quarterback for them. I mean, if he could suit up,
Kendall Hinton?
yeah, if he could suit up, they might get him back. But no, in all seriousness, if this like actually does pan out, I don't see them like I don't know what the hell they do in this scenario, but JJ McCarthy's going to be my pick because he did fall to the Broncos, and that's exactly what they need. I don't know if I love the pick. Throwing JJ McCarthy straight into that offense sounds terrible, and I worry for JJ McCarthy if he does that. I like JJ McCarthy as a prospect in terms of like if he sits behind someone like I discussed earlier. But throwing him straight into a terrible situation, like we say, it's rough. But unfortunately, they kind of have to do this.
Here's what I envision if the Broncos do end up going JJ McCarthy, which they probably would have to in this situation. Um, even if Jared Stidham's starting, sit him. Sit him. He's not a guy that you want going into a terrible situation in his first year. He went from a well-oiled machine at Michigan to a complete dumpster fire over the past decade in the Denver Broncos. Um, Not a situation you need your rookie, unproven quarterback to go into.
No.
So if I'm them, then I sit him for a year. But then again, there's also outside factors. In a vacuum, that's what you should do. But Sean Payton is probably fighting to keep his job. The front office is fighting to keep their jobs. There's new ownership. I like there's a lot of moving pieces. But if they were to go JJ McCarthy, I'd call this a dead year and just sit him anyway.
Yeah, I mean they have their first next year, right? I'm assuming they do.
Yeah, hopefully.
Um, but yeah, coming back to it with the Broncos, as you said, a complete like dumpster fire of an organization right now.
Mhm.
And I'm just kind of curious. This is off topic, but like they weren't interested in Justin Fields at all. They couldn't like give up like a fifth rounder or something like it doesn't make any sense to me how he's not like it makes no
I don't,
sense how he's not like a starting quarterback somewhere.
I don't know why no one wanted him. It doesn't make sense. If the asking price really went that far down
It
to where
did.
the Steelers were, yeah, where the Steelers were able to get him for that deal, why would the Broncos or the Raiders not make a move?
It's so
I
strange.
understand the Raiders have Minshew now, and I like Minshew, but like, why wouldn't you try and make a move, especially if you're the Broncos?
Yeah.
Ugh, it doesn't make sense. But hopefully Justin Fields will revive his career in Pittsburgh. I'm rooting for him,
Mm.
especially now that he's not playing for a division rival. Um, so that brings us to the Las Vegas Raiders. Viva Las Vegas. Gardner Minshew is your new starting quarterback. Uh, unless you're very high on Bo Nix, the quarterbacks are gone.
Yeah.
So you're probably not taking one here. So you build somewhere else. The defense, I'd venture to say that it's much improved. We saw a few pieces working out very well. Max Crosby is obviously the focal point. He's your building block. No one's on the same level as he is, but you do have other good pieces there. Hopefully, Tyree Smith can turn into something.
Harry Wilson.
Doesn't look Tyree Wilson. Sorry, that sounded right when it wrong when it rolled off the tongue. Hopefully he can turn into something, but it's not looking good right now. Um, but I thought about going defense here because there are still spots to fill, but I decided to go offensive line. Josh Jacobs is no longer there. You're either going to be dealing with a rookie running back or Zamir White, who's basically a rookie running back. Um, so I have them going with my offensive tackle number 2, Olu Fashanu from Penn State. He's a really
Okay.
big guy, can play guard or tackle. Makes perfect sense for me.
And that is who I was gonna plan for the Saints to take, but this is why we're doing this, so it's not gonna be like a consensus thing. We're kind of like pivoting into real draft day scenarios. So now the Saints lost their guy, and they're pissed. Dennis Allen, after his fourth divorce, as is absolutely fuming. He has nothing to look
why,
forward to.
why is Dennis Allen a head coach in the NFL? Can someone tell me, please?
So the Saints are going to take the next best I guess, offensive tackle prospect. Dennis Allen is a foot already at the door. They're going to continue kind of their mediocrity. I think Talis Fuaga is going to
Hmm.
be. They did just draft Bernhard Raymond a few years. I don't know if that was last year or the year before, but just more tackles doesn't hurt.
Trevor Penning has not turned out the
Oh
way
wait,
that they
shoot.
wanted
Sorry, I
him
got them.
to.
I get them confused.
Yeah, Bernard Ryman's a Colt, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah,
Bernard
my
Ryman's a
bad.
Colt, and he's been pretty good for them.
Yeah, sorry.
But Trevor Penning has not turned out the way they wanted to. He's continued to fall out of the offensive line rotation as a whole. They tried him at guard a little bit, and he just continued to fall down the depth chart. There were character concerns when he started fighting with everybody in camp, and it turns out that just fighting everyone in camp isn't going to get you a starting job on the team
No.
because he's continued to be bad, and he's been a bust thus far. So going with a tackle in the first round makes good sense. Teron Armstead obviously is gone. He's on the Dolphins, and Trevor Penning has not been what they wanted him to be. So Tylee Swaga is just an absolute monster of a human being. Uh, Plug and play day one option for them on the offensive line.
Yep.
Makes sense to me. All right, and then we have the Indianapolis Colts at 15. The Colts are in a weird like no man's land area right now. Hopefully that can change with our boy AR5 coming back to be their quarterback. Hopefully he improves and continues to do that so the Colts can get out of where they currently are.
I don't think
They
people give.
re-signed Kenny Moore.
Sorry, I don't mean to interrupt you, but I don't think people give
Go
Colts
ahead.
the credit they deserve. I think Shane Steichen is a hell of a coach, and he did a hell of a job of Minshew last year. And I think this is just because of how good the Texans seem to be on paper. I think people are undervaluing the Colts. I think the Colts will be pretty solid this year. Not, obviously probably won't win the division, but I think they're definitely a fringe playoff team for sure.
Well, I'm just saying that they're not really in that championship contender area
Yeah.
right now, or really even playoff contender. Like they can make the playoffs, but no one's really expecting them to win a game. Is
Mm.
what I'm saying. I like the future for the team, but they re-signed Kenny Moore, probably the best slot corner in the NFL. But their two outsides have been a rotation of guys the past couple of years. And this is where I have my first DB going off the board with Alabama's Terry and Arnold. I've watched a lot of Alabama football this past college season, and Terry and Arnold is just a guy that's all over the field. Whenever you see someone make a great play in the secondary, it's almost always Terry and Arnold. He doesn't get burnt. He has good hips. He's not afraid to make contact. Like he's just a good defensive player, and that's what the Colts need. So I think Terry and Arnold's a good pick for them.
Yep. Seems. I think he's the consensus cornerback one, although Quinion Mitchell's gotten a lot of hype pre-draft process. But yeah, I like that pick a lot. Now at the Seahawks, it's interesting because towards this kind of like range, I guess, like guys that you'd expect to go at the end of the first round kind of can go here. We've seen it with just names to my mind is like Jahan Dotson. No one expects him to go as high as he did, but he was around this mid range spot. Um, the Cardinals did it with Zaven Collins a few years back. So I think in this, I don't know where he is on majority of boards, but I think Seattle they do need offensive linemen, and they did lose some guys. I don't think they're going to take Jackson Powers Johnson here. I think they're going to go with Byron Murphy out of Texas. Um, Not too much reasoning behind it. I just know they need some defensive help, and he's probably outside of like your secondary players. He's probably one of the better defensive players on this left. So yeah, that's my pick.
I like that a whole lot. Byron Murphy, heck of an athlete. Even though he's not as big as his teammate Tavondre Sweat, who just got into some legal trouble.
Uh-oh.
Um, yeah. Uh, he's the better one for sure. He's a smaller defensive line prospect, but he's not small. He's still a big dude. He's like hovering around that 6'2", 6'3" area, I believe. Um, and he's really, really fast. So speed and power on the interior um, makes sense for the Seattle Seahawks. They haven't had like a game-changing interior defensive lineman since like I don't even want to call him game-changing, but Al Woods was like solid for them, like in the early to mid 2010s. They haven't really had a guy since then, so I think that's a great pick. Um,
Now Jacksonville.
Now going to Jacksonville. Uh, huh? I'm sorry.
I said Jacksonville. I didn't. I was transitioning
Oh,
for you.
okay. Yeah. Jacksonville. So this is a team. Um, that everyone had high hopes for last year, and they just didn't deliver at all. Um, no one really knows why, because I don't think coaching was the problem. Dougie Doug seems like a pretty good coach. Trevor Lawrence wasn't exactly what we wanted him to be. Calvin Ridley wasn't what we wanted him to be. Christian Kirk was hurt. Um, so I think that they go with something on the offensive side here. Uh, I'm between offensive lineman and wide receiver. Um, I see Troy Fatanu, another huge offensive lineman. But I think I'm gonna go with the flashy pick here, and I'm gonna go with Brian Thomas
Love it.
out of LSU.
Love it. Love it.
Um,
Love it. Love it.
Christian Kirk is awesome. He's been great for them, but when you can get a guy like Brian Thomas, I think that's what you have to do. Gabe Davis can serve as just a deep threat. He doesn't have to be the wide receiver too. Brian Thomas is underrated by the fact that he was the wide receiver too on his college team next to Malik Neighbors. It's kind of like a Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson situation. Not saying those two are going to be those type of players, but it is very similar to that situation. Look at Odell Beckham and Jarvis Landry, like two excellent wide receivers, both on this LSU team. It's just one gets looked at more than the other because they're just both so talented.
Mhm.
Brian Thomas is an excellent wide receiver prospect. Probably would have been the first one taken last year, honestly, maybe behind Jackson Smith and Jigba. He'd be a top 2 wide receiver pick last year. Um, and I think he fits into the Jacksonville offense very well.
Yeah. Love that destination for him in terms of fantasy, in terms of real life, in terms of everything. Prime destination for Brian Thomas getting hopefully an improved Trevor Lawrence. And yeah, I really like that pick. Now with the Bengals is a weird team to draft for because obviously they didn't make the playoffs this year because Joe Burrow was hurt. And you always feel like the Bengals they are good enough, but then they have some holes on defense. I see some tackles, like we said, around this area, but they did just get the guy. Is it Trent Brown? I'm not too great with offensive tackles from the Patriots.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
so yeah, they just got him, and then they have Orlando Brown as well. So I don't think they're gonna go tackle.
Big old dudes. Those are some
Yeah,
big dudes, man. They're both
yeah.
like 6'8", 360. Like it's crazy.
So
So wild.
I think their secondary does need help. I mean, Jesse Bates leaving is obviously never a good thing. So I think I'm going to go with Quinion Mitchell out of Toledo, getting a lot of hype, as I said previously. Not a safety like Jesse Bates, but just help in the corner area. They have
Mm-hmm.
some desperate holes in the corner area, and I think this makes perfect sense.
Yeah, Chidobe Awuzie isn't what he used to be. Mike Hilton is aging. Just some holes to fill. Daxton Hill has improved, but he's looking to be more of a safety than a corner.
Yeah.
Um, or like kind of like a nickel as well. So that's just like a strange situation. And drafting a corner does not seem like a bad idea for the Bengals at all.
One. Sorry, we had a very rude interruption, but we are back now. Um, Inc. The Rams are picking. So who are you gonna pick?
Okay, so you just took the potential Aaron Donald replacement. Like obviously he's not replacing Aaron Donald,
No,
but
no, no, no,
that's
no, no, no,
who.
no, no. The Rams are up. You have the Rams pick.
Yes, I know. You just took Byron Murphy, who I'm saying would be like an Aaron
Oh,
Donald. Yeah,
oh.
yeah.
Okay, okay, sorry.
So that could have been a potential landing spot for Byron Murphy, but I mean, now I'm looking either DB or offensive line. The offensive line for the Rams has been pretty bad
They got
as
two
of
new
late.
guards. They got two
They
new
did
guards.
get they did get 2 new guards, but I think some things can still be solved when it comes to the tackle. Joe Noteboom, they signed. I remember he was like one of the first signings of free agency 2 years ago, and he's been unspectacular to say the least. So I'm looking at a guy like Troy Fatanu out of Washington, and it's kind of hard for me to pass up on that. I'm not going to lie, considering how much their defense overachieves with late round picks. but Raheem Morris is gone also. So there's a lot going on with the Rams, and I'm really starting to lean towards that corner, and I think I will. I'm gonna select Nate Wiggins out of Clemson with this
Oh,
pick.
wow, that's a curveball. Okay.
Yes, I mean, I just think that's where I'm going with this.
Okay.
Quinion Mitchell's off the board. I'll go Nate Wiggins.
Okay. So yeah, I don't hate that pick. Rams probably need a corner. But Cooper DeJean could have been interesting there. Anyway, he's kind of later on. Steelers now. Steelers are in a really weird spot because on paper you'd probably think they need receiver, but Mike Tomlin, he's a little edgy.
He loves to edge.
No, no, he doesn't like to do that. Anyway, with the Steelers, I think they take what could be known as like a I don't know. I don't want to say safe pick because I think this is one of the safer picks in the draft. Jackson Powers Johnson is my pick
Mm.
for the Pittsburgh Steelers, and I think they'll get a receiver in the second round or someone.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of reports saying that that's the most likely pick. Like that's the highest betting odds for their Steelers pick is Powers Johnson.
Yeah.
He had a spectacular Senior Bowl. His pro day, all of his testing has been good. So I think that's a good pick for them. Uh, just continuing to shore up that offensive line for whoever ends up being their quarterback of the future. Hopefully, it's Justin Fields, um, and not dangerous. Um, but yeah, I like the pick a whole lot.
Mm-hmm. Now you got the
All right,
Dolphins, who actually have a first round pick. I feel like it's either been taken away or they haven't had a first round pick in forever. So this is interesting.
the Fins, the Fins, the Fins, the Fins. Xavier Howard is gone. Jalen Ramsey's the lone corner in there. Cooper DeJean is an interesting pick. He's an interesting prospect to be looking at here. But on the other hand, you can never get enough protection for the human injury himself too at Tagovailoa. So I'm gonna go with offensive line, and I'm gonna go with Troy Fatanu out of Washington.
Okay, yeah, I like that pick. Just get protection for Tua, but
Mhm.
Dolphins do have some. I feel like the Dolphins they have a lot of like good named valued players, but they can't piece it together, especially on
Mhm.
the defensive side of the ball. And Christian Wilkins is obviously gone now. Would have maybe liked to see a little Leatu there, but obviously they have Bradley Chubb or whatnot. They can maybe wait on that. Um,
Mhm.
Now with the Eagles pick, the Eagles is interesting. I feel like Cooper DeJean is a very I don't know how to say his name. I'm gonna pronounce it like
I,
that.
I say it DeJean, but
I
that's
wanna
probably wrong
I'm gonna
too.
pronounce him like a French guy. So DeJean.
Okay. DeJean.
DeJean is going to land himself on the Eagles. Eagles really need
Mhm.
secondary help. They re-signed Maddox for some reason. I don't know why they did that, but James Bradbury was terrible last year. Darius Slay, this Darius Slay, he'll always be solid, but they're gonna need another guy in, and yeah, and Cooper DeJean could also potentially play safety as well, and with Kevin Byard out the window, get the duo of the white guys representing ourselves. Reed Blankenship and Cooper DeJean. That'd be fun to see.
In my own mock, that's what I have, just because of how great that duo would be. It would be really, really fun to watch.
It'd be pasty for sure.
For sure. Very, very, very gluey. Um, okay. That brings us to the Minnesota Vikings again.
Which
Um,
this pick might be traded, but
yeah. Like we said earlier, this is probably going to be part of the package to move the Vikings up to take a quarterback. And I'd probably say that the defense is looking much more solid. They are still in need of DBs, though, in my opinion. In my own mock draft, I had Byron Murphy the second going here. But with the players available on the board, um, I think I'm between corner and edge rusher.
They have a lot of young corners
They do have a lot of
that
young
are
corners,
unproven.
which is why I'm hesitant to take one. Even though they need help there, there's a lot of guys that are like still developing. You might not want
Andrew
to give up on yet.
Booth. I'm trying to think of another. Andrew Booth is the one that comes to mind
Uh,
immediately.
Byron Murphy.
Yeah,
But like not to mention like this team isn't really make gonna have motion this year. If I'm being real, I love using that.
yeah,
Not gonna have motion this year. So I'm thinking they go for a more developmental piece. Maybe go in the trenches. This is where I'm gonna have Leia Lot 2
like
get
that a
drafted.
lot. Like that a lot. Obviously, lost to Neil Hunter. Needs some kind of defensive prominence. Um,
Hmm.
and yeah, that makes perfect sense. Now, the Cowboys, Inc. I know you had a very interesting take of the Cowboys. You thought obviously you're not picking here, but you thought they were going to take potentially go running back here. I don't
Hmm.
see that because although the Cowboys do like to make kind of like random first round picks, we've seen it in the past few years. They're taking guys that no one have expected them to take. I don't think this is the year to take a running back in the first round. If they're going to do it next year, and you can get Judkins or Ollie Gordon. But yeah,
Oh yeah.
with
Oh yeah.
The Cowboys need offensive line help, as we discussed earlier. Tyron Smith left, and their center left as well. Jackson Powers Johnson would have been a nice pick for the Cowboys here, but he's off the board. So I'm gonna go with, I guess, I don't want to say a safe pick. He is safe. I'm gonna go J.C. Latham out of Alabama.
I like that pick a whole lot. That's where I had JC Latham going as well. I switched it out of the running back because I mean, like you said, they do have some other holes that they need to fill. They lost a lot of guys in free agency. Uh, Running back is something they can wait on.
Yeah,
Uh, Dak is in the last year of his deal for like the ninth time. I feel like the guy's deal is constantly expiring, but he's in the last year of his deal. So they're going to have to make a serious move. They can maybe get a running back later in the second round, whether that be a Bucky Irving, whether that be a Blake Corum, whether that be even a Jonathan Brooks, if they somehow find their way into getting him. They can get a running back later, first round, sure up some of those O line spots that Tyler Biotish left
yeah,
and
for
Tyron
sure,
Smith.
for sure, for sure.
Yeah. Which brings us to 25. My favorite team, the Green Bay Packers. I'm going to pick who I want them to take, who I think they should take. And that means that they're not going to pick this person because the Green Bay Packers never take who I want them to, even if it's like a chalk pick. So with the 25th pick, I have the Green Bay Packers selecting Kool-Aid McKinstry out of Alabama. Eric Stokes has been injury prone, and although his rookie year was very good, he's been pretty underwhelming since then. Keyshawn Nixon's a fantastic player to fit a role, but I'm not sure I want him starting all the time. Uh, he's our return specialist and provides versatility, but Kool-Aid McKinstry can be that real corner of the future, especially if Jair ever ends up leaving. Luke, just sneeze.
I'm on mute.
Okay. But yeah, I like Kool-Aid McKinstry a whole lot. He was originally projected to be like a top 10 pick in this year's draft, and the talent is definitely still there. He had a good season, just not a top 10 level worthy season. So I'm very excited to get him at pick 25.
um, I thought you were more. I didn't think you were a big fan of Khalid McKintry. That's interesting. You went there. But nonetheless makes sense. Packers always seems like they need secondary help. Now with the Buccaneers this is an interesting spot. Buccaneers obviously re-signed all of their guys that they needed to this offseason. Antoine Winfield, Baker Mayfield, Mike Evans. I don't know if I'm forgetting anyone. I probably am. But here I think they just need a defensive kind of a defensive guy. Obviously lost Devin White to the Eagles, which he
I,
wasn't our sorry, am I mixing up the names?
I think you are. I could be wrong. Wait, did he? Did he go to the Eagles? I'm looking right
Yeah,
now.
yeah.
Yes, he did. He did go to the Eagles. You're
Yeah.
correct.
I mean, he obviously
Jeez,
didn't
man.
he kind of fell off a little bit, but right here, I really like the pick of Chop Robinson from Penn State,
Mhm.
and I'm gonna go with Chop Robinson to the Buccaneers.
Yeah, the thing that people don't necessarily realize about Devin White is that they used him a lot in the pass rush game, even though he was a middle linebacker. He's a guy that made like big plays, but not necessarily the right one. And they took um, Logan Hall, who we called Logan Paul in the pre-draft process. They took Joe Tryon, Shoyinka, and neither of those guys have really worked out. Shaquille Barrett is now in Miami. So the edge outside of Yaya Diaby is not looking too hot. So taking Chop Robinson is a good pick, in my opinion, and fits what they need the most.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and that takes us to pick number 27, which is the Arizona Cardinals. Uh Arizona, to remind you, earlier we had them taking Mr. Marvin Harrison Jr., wide receiver out of Ohio State. And there's still a lot of holes for Arizona to fill. The person that's sticking out to me at the moment is an offensive tackle. They just released DJ Humphreys this offseason, their former Pro Bowl offensive tackle. I think bringing in rookie Amarius Mims out of Georgia makes perfect sense in this spot, and that's who I'm going to have the Cardinals take.
Yeah, as a Cardinal fan, I don't hate that at all. Obviously, we signed Jonah Williams from the Bengals, who mm, he's solid, but nothing crazy. Paris Johnson can play a tackle, can play a guard. I'm sure we'll figure that out. And getting another tackle in there doesn't hurt at all.
My guess would be Jonah Williams would play at guard. He hasn't been like particularly great at tackle since he in his time in the league. He profiles much better as a guard. So my what my vision is here is Amarius Mims and Paris Johnson as your two tackles.
Yeah, well, well said. And now the Bills. Obviously, Bills. We discussed the Stephon Diggs trade. Huge hole at wide receiver. And obviously, look at the guys available: Adonai Mitchell, Xavier Worthy, Lad McConkey, all Keon Coleman, all great options. I don't think you can really go wrong. I'm just gonna pick who I think that they would take
Mm-hmm.
the most appeal to, and that's Adonai Mitchell.
Mm-hmm.
Xavier Worthy is an unbelievable prospect, but I'm assuming they're not. They're going to want to profile a guy more like Adonai Mitchell as a wide receiver one over Xavier Worthy, and I think that makes the most sense for what they're looking for.
I love Xavier Worthy, but I have to admit that Adonai Mitchell is definitely the more complete receiver in terms of physical stature, hands, route running, all that stuff. Xavier Worthy, obviously the fastest man in football,
Yeah,
um, heading in, and that's a crazy thing to have on your team. But Adonai Mitchell is extremely talented, and I don't think that you can overlook that. So that brings us to pick 29, the Detroit Lions. The Detroit Lions are in an interesting spot where they don't really need too much, but they didn't win last year. Their quarterback situation is good. Even if Goff, something happens to Goff, they have Hendon Hooker as their backup, who I still have faith in. The running backs are Jameer Gibbs and David Montgomery. Wide receiver room is a little weak. You have Amon Ra, you have JMO, who we're still waiting on to break out, and then outside of that, you don't really have much going
yeah.
on.
Josh Reynolds left to the Broncos.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, this is an interesting pick. I'm curious what you have to say here.
Yeah, I mean, offensive line is as solid as they come, so I don't really see this being an O line pick. Uh, D line interior is potentially always a spot for the Lions, like Levi Onwuzurike and Aleem McNeil. Specifically, Aleem McNeil has been solid, but you can always upgrade there. They've drafted 9 million edge rushers in the past 3 years,
Mm,
so really, really no need there. What I have them doing is replacing their big free agency acquisition from last year. CJ Gardner Johnson went back to Philly, and I'm going to have the Lions take Tyler Nubin, safety out of Minnesota.
okay, yeah, I don't hate that. Um, Obviously we've seen this offseason how undervalued safeties have been. People are dropping their safeties like left, right, and center. Obviously, Lions don't need too many. positions. Obviously, some holes to be filled, but safety is a glaring hole, and that makes perfect sense. Now with the Ravens at pick 30, it's interesting because the Ravens in the past, 3 years have taken two wide receivers in the first round, and they'll
Mm.
probably end up doing it again. At least that is where my mind is heading.
Wow.
But but then again, looking down, we have tons of tackle help, tons of
Hmm.
guards. So I'm actually not gonna go with that. I think I'm going to go with, and this is gonna be completely raw and unedited, by the way, because I want you guys to see how like we analyze this and kind of determine who to pick here. So I'm gonna go with Graham Barton out of Duke to be the Ravens' new offensive
Nice.
guard.
Nice. Rangy tackle, big guy, super long arms, good athlete. Like I think that fits very well. I was thinking O line as well for the Ravens, so I'm glad you went there. Me personally, I have guys like Tyler Guyton and Kingsley Suamata ahead of Graham Barton, but I do like him a whole lot. So uh, I think that's a good pick. I'm happy with that if I'm a Ravens fan. Uh, and now the San Francisco 49ers at 31. Again, I get another team where there's not many holes to fill. It's like really kind of scary to think about how good the 49ers still are, yet they still didn't win the Super Bowl. Haha, you guys suck. Um I if I had to nitpick one thing, it's that Chase Young is no longer on their team. So I don't know who's on the opposite side of Nick Bosa. So what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to take edge rusher Chris Braswell out of Alabama to be the 49ers first round pick.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Very interesting. He's a little later on the
Yeah,
board I'm looking at, but
it's a bit of a reach, but I think the talent is there and the 49ers always get the best out of their players. So I'd be excited to see what they can do with him. Plus they have Drake Jackson who's good as well. Um, Chris Braswell can start out as a rotational guy and eventually get more snaps.
listen, like at the I want to say from like as I said from pick 16 to like late in the first round, these guys are so interchangeable. It really depends on positional needs or what they see in a guy or a guy they like. All these guys kind of can go in the same range. It's really, but that's a fun of mocking. You don't really know,
Mm-hmm.
but that is a hole, and you filled it very well. Now, the last pick of the first
Pause.
round. Now, the last pick of the first round, the Kansas
I'm
City
curious to see
Chiefs.
what you do with this. I'm really curious to see what you do with this because a month ago we would have all been saying receiver, and now we might still be saying receiver, but for different reasons.
Um, yeah, obviously we're not lawyers, so we don't know what's going on with Free Rice, but I'm assuming he's going to get a little suspension. I don't think it's not gonna be like he's gonna be out of the NFL or anything like that. I'm assuming he's gonna get like a 3 game suspension or something like that. So we can't. I don't think they're gonna go receiver here because there's so many receivers in the second round they can get. So I'm just gonna go with another tackle because why not? I mean, all these teams they couldn't hurt to add another tackle. Tyler Guyton is my last pick of the first round.
Very nice. Very nice. Me personally, not that it matters because our mock is complete now. I'm very happy with it. I think it looks good. A lot of teams filled needs that and I think we did a pretty good job overall. Uh for that Chiefs pick, I probably would have went with DB, a corner, just because they lost Snead.
Yeah, the thing with
Um
the thing at the corners, there's not too many. I feel like in that range, there's not too many guys that
mhm.
they could have. I mean, obviously, there's TJ Tampa. There's the guy from Michigan.
Yeah.
There's Max Melton, whose draft stock is rising a lot, but I don't think he'd go in the first round.
Yeah.
And at that point, it was either Xavier Worthy, who they just signed Marquise Brown, so I feel like that collide a little bit. Um,
Mhm.
and I just thought Tyler Guyton was the best player available, and it made sense. obviously looking back on it now, Xavier Worthy probably will go in the first round. It's just, without trading, it alters the whole thing. I think the Lions could
Oh
be
yeah.
a good candidate for Xavier Worthy.
Mhm.
I don't even know. Like the Bills very well could be. The Cardinals could be if we trade down. There's a
Mhm.
lot of possibilities here. Xavier Worthy probably would be a first rounder with trades, but without it, we're just filling needs. And I think, I mean, I'm pretty happy with it. I don't know if you are.
Yeah, no, I'm super happy with it. There are a lot of talented players entering the draft. Like this is the it might seem like a lower tier draft than we had last year. Last year's draft was a whole lot of fun, especially after 2022 with no quarterbacks. But this is still going to be a super exciting draft, at least for the early part of it. I mean, you got guys that could still be first rounders that we didn't name, like Chris Jenkins, obviously Xavier Worthy, Ennis Rakestraw out of Missouri, Troy Franklin from Oregon, Keon Coleman, Kingsley Suamida,
Lad
uh,
McConkey.
yeah, Lad McConkey, uh, Kamari Lassiter. His draft stock has been
Yeah,
rising.
I like him a lot.
And then the linebacker out of NC State too. I'm forgetting his name right now. Peyton Wilson.
He visited the
He's a
Chargers today. Yeah.
yeah. He's a potential first round guy as well. So a lot of good talent. And TJ Tampa. Look, I can keep going all day. Like
Yeah.
lots of talented players that we didn't have go in the first round, and they still very well can.
Yeah, very well. And that just about wraps it up. We're gonna be posting these on Twitter. Obviously, I'm gonna be keeping kind of active during the whole draft process. I hope you will too, because I like when
Yeah.
we're active on Twitter. And Ink, if you want to plug the socials.
Yeah. We will continue to be active on Twitter, more so our personal ones than the Keeping It Spooky one. But we'll try and reply to you guys if you have any questions, if you have any suggestions, hit us up on our podcast Twitter.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, your Twitter is Luke Christie 1, right?
14.
Luke Christie 14, and then mine is just Mike Inky, so or Michael Inky. So uh, look for us to be active on there. Follow us on TikTok. We haven't, for some reason, we haven't been too active since free agency, but we'll get back onto that. I promise.
Vacations,
And
vacations.
for real, spring break hit us hard. But if uh, if you guys enjoyed this, then please feel free to subscribe, like the video. It only helps our podcast to grow, and we love to do it. And we love people watching it. So if you guys could do that, that would be awesome. Hope you enjoyed, and we'll see you next time.
Yep, perfectly said. See you guys in the next episode. We'll probably be after the draft is going through the draft, some picks we like, etc. But exciting times ahead. Any?
We might be live streaming the draft.
Oh yes, yes, yeah,
That's big news. We'll post a TikTok about it. We'll post it on the Twitter as well, and we'll send the link obviously on the Twitter when it is done. But yeah, we'll hopefully be streaming the draft, uh, seeing what you guys think, interacting with you guys. It should be fun.
yeah. I have to learn how to set that up, but should be a fun stream if it happens. And thank you guys for watching. Thank you for listening on audio. If you are not too many viewers on there, but would love to see that grow. And see you guys in the next episode.